Alright, this session we're going to go ahead and we're going to completely restore a Westinghouse H11 refrigerator radio. These are from back in the 50s. They're a nice little tube radio. They're quite collectible. They're not expensive on eBay. You can find one for under $100, well under $100 in as found condition. I paid $50 for this one here, plus another $15 or so shipping. Have another one. This is one that's been taken apart. You got two halves that are your shells. You got the brass frame, and you got the guts of the thing, which is the radio. And we'll go through and we'll do the restoration on the radio and the cosmetic. This one has got problems with it. We can see here that this dial plastic is warped severely. We'll show you how to go ahead and straighten that out. Now, when you're buying the radio, there are several things that you have to look out for. Okay, the first thing, look carefully at your case and make sure you don't have any cracks in it. You don't want to get one that's got a cracked case. If you get it at a bargain price, you can get it and glue it back together, but you want to preferably get one without a cracked case. The second thing, make sure you got your knobs. The knobs are hard to find. It isn't right if you put just any old knob on it. And making some replacement knobs is possible because they're a very simple shape. But if you can get it with the knobs, that's good. Another thing is make sure your handle is there. This is a golden rule. When you look at it, make sure the handle is there. If the handle is missing, then it's oh boy. If it's missing the handle, the value of the radio drops to next to nothing. Now, if you're getting the radio in parts like this one here, there are two little retainers screws. These are what holds the shells on. These are on each side. And you want to make sure that you've got those, because those are hard to find. They're an odd-shaped little thing. One of them has got an internal thread, the other's an external thread, and both of them are a flathead type of tapered screw. So these are a real bear to find if you don't have them. So you want to make sure that you do have these screws. Okay, other than that, you're in pretty good shape. The spacers that go in between, those will come. If you've got the radio in intact condition, it's not in pieces, you're pretty sure to have all your parts. All right? To open the radio, to get it apart, use the Allen wrench. The other side is an ordinary screwdriver. Take those, screw them together so you don't lose them. Put them in a box to save them. Your knobs just pull straight out. They can be tight, but they're easy to get off. Okay, now you can take your shells off. Your handle. Okay. Now, you can inspect your radio then to see that it's all intact. This one's in excellent condition here. Once again, our dial plastic is warped to hell. That is, every single one of them is going to have warped dial plastic. So the warped dial plastic is just a characteristic. Okay, first thing you do, just go ahead and cut the cord off of it. Take a cutter, just lop the cord off of it and throw it away. You're going to put a new cord on a radio. Whenever you do one of these radios, unless the cord is pristine, put a new cord on it. Now, to get the brass off, we've got a screw in the bottom here. It's a broken piece here from somewhere. I don't know where it came from. It's part of one of these. It's a little broken piece. I'll just put it in the box here in case. I don't think it's necessary. Okay, and then the other screw is on the top. There's a piece of felt for the handle, and that hides the top screw. Take that. Place your screws in a box so you don't lose them. Okay. Then you can slide the chassis out of the housing. Okay. Now, the antenna wire is soldered onto this terminal here. What we're going to do is we're just going to lop that off of there. We're just going to take a cutters and we're going to cut it loose. We'll solder it back on there when we put it all back together again. You can unsolder it if you want to mess with that, but you don't have to. Okay, and there's our piece of brass. This one's in perfect shape. Sometimes they'll be bent or dented and you have to straighten them, but this one's perfect. Okay, and here's our chassis. This one also has not been touched. You can look at it and see all the parts are original. It's not been touched. These capacitors are all bad. You can't leave them in there. If you leave them in there, even if they measure sort of good, you're going to have them fail sooner or later. Chances are all the tubes are good. Tubes you can reuse, but the capacitors have all got to go. All right, let's go and see what we have to do to take care of the cosmetic part of it. First thing we need to do, we got to strip the old paint off of these. We're going to use some stuff. It's a spray stuff. A premium stripper. It's pretty cheap. Sprays on instead of brushes. You can use the brush on stuff if you want it. It's all the same. This just kind of sprays on. A little bit easier to apply than the brush on stuff. Put it on plenty heavy. All right, now we're going to let that sit for about an hour and then we'll come back and get the paint off. All right, it's sat here for half an hour and the paint is loose on it. Take a scraper and just go ahead and do the initial removal. You might want to use gloves when you're handling this stuff. We're just going to take this steel wool It's an extremely tough paint that is on there. I don't know what kind it is. I don't know that they had epoxy paint back then, but it acts like epoxy paint. It says on here this stuff takes epoxy paint off. It does not. It does not affect epoxy paint, I tell you. I've got some stuff with epoxy paint and there's no paint remover that's made that'll touch it. It comes off of these some of these old appliances. And you know, it's any of the stuff that you put on yourself, the stripper will take off. But you get the commercially put on epoxy paint, and these strippers will not touch it. They don't make a stripper that'll take that epoxy paint. They don't make it. They say it'll take it, but you know, you can try it. You'll sit there in frustration. You may as well just scrape it off, because that's what you're going to end up doing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and strip these down off camera, and then we'll... Okay, once you get it to where paint thinner is off of it, Take ordinary, the paint strippers off it. Take ordinary paint thinner and just completely swab it down to get the remains. The paint remover is some really nasty stuff, so you want to get that off of there before you do any more work on it. Paint thinner is a lot less hostile towards human skin, so you just take that and brush it on there. Get 99% of it off. We're going to sand it all down, so we don't need to get all of it absolutely off at this step. Just get the majority of it off and get the paint stripper off so that you don't get your hands attacked. Okay, we've used paint thinner to remove all of the stripper. Then we take a rag and we dry it off to where we have it completely dry and clean. Alright, now we have a glaze on it. We have to break that glaze so the paint will stick to it. We use 220 grit sandpaper. And just take that and sand the whole thing down to where it's a uniform, dull finish. You want it to be a uniform, dull finish. Just smooth as can be, but dull. We don't want the gloss. If we have the gloss, the paint will potentially strip off wherever there's a glossy spot and leave a bubble or a broken spot. So we want to have it to where it all has just a uniform, dull finish. And that way the paint will adhere perfectly. Okay, we're just going to take these halves and go ahead and completely sand them down. Okay, we've got them all sanded down. Now take a rag and wipe off the sanding dust. And notice that they're completely smooth now. And a dull finish. They don't have any gloss on them anywhere. So the paint will stick really good to them. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint them. Now, we're using metal flake as Duplicolor metal spec paint. Get it at the auto supply. It's expensive as all get out. It's about $12 for a can of this. But boy, you talk about some beautiful paint. Now, we want these to be warm to the touch. Not hot, but warm to the touch. They should not feel cool when you feel them. You want them to be actually warm to the touch. They're not hot to the touch. You should be able to just feel them and it feels like touching somebody's skin. Hold the can back about no closer than 6 inches. Usually around 8 to 12 inches is just right. And just make quick passes on it. Don't stop. Keep the can moving at all times. If you stop, you'll get a splotch and it'll run. It's better to put a lot of coats than it is to put it on heavy. Oh, I smashed into it with the can. Not good. Keep the can far enough away to where you don't smash into it with the bottom of the can. Another thing is hold the can to where it's not over. Sometimes it'll drip off of the can and you get a fisheye on the darn paint. So keep it to where it's always off from on top of the shell so that you don't have a drip get onto the shell. By having it warm to the touch, the paint dries very quickly so it doesn't tend to run. If you have it cold, the paint can take too long to dry and you'll tend to run. Okay, now that's going to do for the first coat. We're going to let that sit and dry I didn't say anything about when to put the second coat on, but in the past I've always waited about a half an hour. Let the paint get pretty dry before we put the second coat on. Okay, we'll let that sit there and dry. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and do the finishing coat. This will not be as much as we put on the first coat. We've let it dry for an hour. And I'm just going to go over and do a light finishing coat on it. Okay, now the other one. Make sure you get the corners. Sometimes you know, the angle is wrong on the corners, no matter where you are, so you have to take extra care to make sure that you get those corners. Okay, now look at them very carefully to make sure that the color is even all the way across. Put a little extra on if you have to. Alright, they look absolutely beautiful. Alright, now, we just let those dry. Now, we don't want to do anything with these for at least 5 days. It'll take that long for the paint to completely harden. Now, if you have an oven, then you can put it in the oven at 200 degrees and it will dry it in a matter of hours. But if you're going to just let it air dry, you should leave it for about 5 days. If you have good bright sunlight, like in the summertime, you can put them in direct sunlight to where they get really hot, and you can dry them in 1 day. You know, just leave them out on the porch for 1 day in the direct sunlight, and that'll dry them completely. But if you're just going to leave them sit in the house or in the garage or somewhere, you're going to take at least 5 days to dry, because it just takes that long to harden. You know, it'll feel dry to the touch, but it'll be such that if you press your fingernail on it, it'll dent into the paint. And as long as you can dent your fingernail into the paint, it's not fully dry. And we don't want to do anything with it until the paint is so hard that when you press your fingernail on it, it doesn't leave a dent in it. Okay, we're going to just let that. Okay, next thing we have to do is we have to strip these housings. Okay, we go ahead and we just take them. They've got a lacquer on them of some kind, and it turns kind of a dark, dirty looking brassy color. Now we got a plastic decal here we don't want to hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray get everything coated good here. Now on this, we do the same thing that we did on the other one. Just take this steel wool, and you see this lacquer crap comes right off, leaving the bare brass, which is what we want. It's miserable to do, but you know, it's just one of those things. If you want to really make it look good, you got to go through the actions. Just take that steel wool and just work it on there. You get as much of it as you can off, because we'll have to go back and do the rest of it in a different way. There'll be some of it that you can't get off because it's tight down in the cracks and stuff. Just get as much of it as you can. I mean, you can get most of it off. Alright, I'll go ahead and do that off camera. Don't worry too much about the polish right now. We'll polish it up in a minute. The main thing is to get all that stripper and lacquer off of there so that we got just the bare metal to work with. If we got the stripper on there, any of it left on there, then the coating we put on it isn't going to stick. So we've got to make sure this thing is absolutely clean. You can wear gloves when you're doing this too if you want to. Paint thinner is not quite as rough on your hands as the stripper. You don't want to get the stripper on your hands, but the paint thinner, just wash your hands good after you're done. You won't have any trouble. Okay, when you're done, take a rag and just wipe that whole sucker off. Get it absolutely dry. Okay, see how that looks? Nice and clean, shiny. Okay, we'll make it even shinier when we get done. But right now, we just want to get it completely cleaned of all the stripper and paint thinner and stuff like that. Just completely dry it off good. Okay, now, the next thing, we use fine steel wool. This is 4/0 steel wool, the finest that they've got. Take that and just start buffing. Buff that sucker down to where it's as shiny as you can get it. Make it look like a mirror. That'll make it look the best. Absolutely as shiny as you can get it. Particularly do the front and the top. The back and the bottom and all that, that's not as important, but the front and the top needs to be good because that's what everybody's going to see. Okay, if you're not having much luck with the steel wool, you can get one of these cloth polishing wheels. Take it, mount it in your electric drill, and get it to where you can turn it on, and get some black rouge. This is from Caswell Plating Company. You can find it on the internet. It's about $10 for a block like this. This is called Black Emery Cake, fast cutting, and it is very good material for polishing brass. You can see that it leaves an absolute mirror finish when you're done with it, and it's a little bit easier than doing the steel wool by hand. Okay, first thing you do, get the drill going, and then we'll load it up and polish. Okay, here we have the completed frame. Look how shiny that is. It's just like a mirror. Okay, and that's just using the buffing wheel. You can do the same thing by hand with the steel wool, but it'll just take you 2 or 3 hours. A lot of more elbow grease. Now, after you get through using the buffing wheel, take a paper towel with some spray. You can get this at any auto supply. It's brake parts cleaner. This is degreaser. It dries and leaves no residue. And what you want to do is wipe this completely down to get that grease off of there. The rouge has got a grease in it that goes ahead and lubricates it, and that'll make your lacquer not stick. So we want to completely wash this thing down with this degreaser before we go ahead and lacquer it. Okay, now we've got the whole thing beautifully polished up, just using the fine steel wool, combination coarse steel wool to get it, all the remaining little bits and pieces of the coating off of it, and then take the fine steel wool and just buff it up until you get it beautiful like this. Make it nice and shiny looking. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to take a Marks-A-Lot pen. We're going to very carefully, right on the very tops of the Westinghouse. We only want to hit the tops of the letters with the black. We're just going to very carefully just touch it off so that we put a little bit of contrast. I'm being very careful not to go down inside or anything. We just want to hit the top so that the Westinghouse will show up a little bit better. Okay? Alright, the next thing we're going to do, this particular piece, we're going to go ahead and spray with clear lacquer. This is just ordinary lacquer you can get at the Home Depot or wherever. Okay, first, do the bottoms. There are 2 places on the bottom here. Okay, hold the can about 6 to 8 inches away and just put a light coat on it. Okay, once you get the bottom done, then just take it and very carefully do a light coat. Do not do it so heavy that it runs. Better to put more coats than it is to put a heavy one that starts running. Now let that dry for about 15 minutes and then we'll put another coat on it. Okay? Put our second coat on. Usually 2 coats is all it takes. Looks good. Okay, that looks real good. Alright, now we're going to let that dry. We don't want to mess with any of the stuff we paint for at least 2 days. It takes about 2 days for the lacquer and the paint to dry. I'm going to set it on its side so we can let the bottom dry. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to coat the shells with the clear coat to give them gloss. Now, to do this, first we need to make wire hangers. Take some coat hanger or any kind of baling wire, anything. Make some hangers that you can hang them vertically. You need you a spot that you can hang them. I'm going to use this drill press, and they will just hang like so, because we got to let them hang overnight. They have to hang overnight so that the clear cast will drain off of it and leave just a smooth coat on it. Don't try to just lay them on something. If you lay them on something, then it'll glue onto it. You know, it'll round the bottom, it'll touch, and it'll adhere. So you have to sit there and hang them so that you don't have anything touching. Okay? Now, the material that we use is tabletop cement. This is 2-part tabletop cement. You can get this at most hardware stores, and you can get it at hobby shops like Hobby Lobby and things like that. Get you a junky paintbrush. You can clean it. It dissolves very well in paint thinner. You can clean it afterwards, but still I wouldn't use my good paint brushes for this. Okay, take up your shells and make up your hangers for them and be ready to go. Okay, now when you mix the stuff, you mix equal parts of it. It'll take about, in these containers here, it takes about a 1/2 inch in each container to make enough to do the 2 shells. So you take a 1/2 inch out of here and a 1/2 inch out of the other one, pour it into your mixing container. Okay, now we take this, mix it up. Make sure every square inch of it is coated. You don't have to worry about how thick it is. Put it on thick. Make sure it's coated. It's going to drain off of there overnight. Alright, now take that and hang it. Put plenty of newspaper down below because it's going to sit there and drip all night long. Now, we can see like right here it's not dripping. Take the brush and just kind of smooth it down there. Make sure that it's going good. Okay, now we just let those sit overnight, and then in the morning they will be just as slick as can be. The first thing we're going to do, we've got to take care of this dial. So go ahead and remove it. It's very easy to straighten. All of these things are warped. I haven't found one yet that hasn't been warped. It's just a piece of plastic and the thing's just warped up. Alright, I'm going to show you how to flatten it. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to use an iron. Okay, go ahead and set it to about medium heat, and if you have an iron that has a temperature control on it that's calibrated, set it to about 350 or so. You don't want it so hot that it's going to melt the plastic. Now, do not put the iron directly on the plastic. Take a little piece of cloth, this is just plain cotton cloth, and place that over it, and then press down on it. Take a little while to go through. Don't make it so hot that it screws it up now. Okay? Nice and flat. Okay? Got a second one here. I'm doing 2 radios, so I'm going to do both of them. And there we are. That just flattens it out. Okay? They don't have to be absolutely flat. They just need to be more or less mostly flat. Okay? That's all you do. Nothing to it. Now, take it and put it back on in the same direction that it came off. What you want is when the plates are completely unmeshed, you want the 16 to be at the top. The top is this direction. Okay, and then as you turn it counterclockwise, it will go on around until the 500 is at the top. Okay? Nothing to it. Okay, now, make sure you're now, that is loose. I'm also going to place a drop of oil on the shaft. Place it right on the joint. Make sure you don't get it on the string. Okay, and then turn it a little bit to go ahead and work it into the bearing. Okay, and that makes it very easy to turn. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to put the new cord on it. I've got a cord here. Carefully observe where the old one went. You use a soldering iron. If you have a soldering iron, get you at least a 60 watt. I mean, you're doing old radio connections, not circuit boards, so you need a pretty good amount of heat. Now, the original cords were put in with a cardboard clamp that clamped it. All you do is reach in with a pair of pliers and bend that clamp up, and you can get that out of there. This one is missing. I don't know where it is. You don't need it. You know, the cord isn't going to go anywhere. On this particular type of radio, it does not matter which of the two cord connections go to where on the terminals. Take that and press it down, because we have our adjustments for our IF transformer here that go through the side here. So we want to press that cord down so that we don't block our holes. Okay, another thing is go ahead and bend that transformer so that our two adjustment holes are in the right place, and tighten the screw. Okay, because we'll be adjusting these. We go through these holes here to the IF cam. We've got to make sure it's straight down. It's only held with one screw so it can swivel. Okay, the next thing we have to do, these capacitors are no good. You cannot leave them in there. You may be tempted to leave them in there. Now we can take it, we'll take one. I'm just going to take this 0.1 right here, which is easy to get to, and I'm just going to cut it. I'm leaving the wires here. I'm just leaving a little bit on there. Now I'm going to take the meter. I'm going to set it on the times 100K scale. See, we've got leakage in that capacitor. A good capacitor, let me show you a good one. Okay, here's the same exact value, but this is a modern good one. We get no reading at all on the 100K scale. A digital meter is going to be almost useless for measuring these capacitors. It doesn't put enough voltage on them to really get a good reading. These old meters put out 30 volts, and that makes it where you can test these old capacitors very nicely. But we're going to replace all the capacitors. You don't need to test them. They're cheap, and if you leave them in there, leave one of the old ones in there, you're asking to have it fail. Okay, we'll get some capacitors and start going after it. All right, that one is a 0.1. I'm just going to strip back the wires that came off the old capacitor a little bit. .1 capacitor, I'm using these. These are cheap. These are little circuit board type capacitors. The wires come out the bottom instead of out the ends. But they'll fit in there just fine, and they'll work just fine. You can get these from Mouser. All the capacitors you need for doing this from Mouser for a few dollars. Put some solder on your wires before you try to solder it. And just stick it on there. Alright, that one there's a little long. I'll just cut it off. Position it in there so that it doesn't touch anything. You don't have to worry about it. It's not going anywhere. You know, you can sit there and go with tubing and all that if you want to, but you don't really need to. All right, let's get this one here. All right, that's an 025. Okay, that's an odd value, so we're going to use an 02 instead. Okay, one of them goes to the terminal where that 33K resistor is. Remember that. The other one has enough wire on it to where we can cut it off. Okay. Use the closest value you've got. They don't have to be exact. This is a .02. We're replacing a 0.25 with it. It'll work just fine. You'll never know the difference. Okay, we solder one of them where the 33K resistor is. The other one goes to the wire. Cut the extra off, and that's that. Okay, we got another one here. All right, another .1. Okay, I'm just going to cut the wires off right at the capacitor, so we got some wire to solder to. Okay, we got another one underneath. I'm going to go ahead and replace that one first before we put the one over it. So I'm going to take the two wires for that .1 and I'm going to stick them there. We're going to catch this one underneath and we're going to catch that one underneath first. Okay, before we put the one on top. Otherwise we'll have trouble getting to it. Now, I'm going to reach down in there and they all go to this, the 2.1s, this big one here. Okay, this is a .2, okay? We have a .2 on the bottom here. So I'm going to cut it. It goes the same places where that .1 goes, so I'm going to cut it loose. This is a little pointy type cutter, so it's a little handier to get down in places than the standard base. You can get these at like Radio Shack or something like that. They're $10, $15, or Mouser. You can get them from Mouser. Okay, the other side of this one goes to the tube socket that is connected to the chassis. It's one of the lugs on the tube socket that goes to the chassis. Now I don't have any .2 capacitors, so I'm going to take two .1s and I'm going to put them in parallel. Now that'll make a .2. Alright, one of them goes to the lug that's up ground. Well, gotta wait till it cools. Alright, we bend her around, bring the other wire over, and fasten it on. Notice I'm also using 16th inch solder here. You can use the little thin circuit board solder, this little 1 millimeter circuit board solder, but you just have to keep feeding it until you get it in there. Doesn't matter what you use, but if you got some of the 16th, it's a little bit easier to feed it on these old connections where it takes a big bunch. Okay, next we've got a .01, which is down underneath here. I'm going to take that one. I'm going to cut the wire off there so we have something to solder to. Cut the other one off. Okay, get rid of it. It's junk. Capacitors here, they'll work fine. Any kind of capacitor you've got will work just fine. Okay, this has got long wires on it, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim it. Now I'm going to solder it right to the terminal. I'm not going to put it to the wire. So I'll just take that piece of sleeving, stick it over the capacitor, and I'll just snip that. And we'll cut that piece of wire off. And remember where it goes, of course. Remember where it goes. Don't get it to the wrong pin or you'll really have trouble. Okay. And on the other side, I'm pulling a piece of sleeving off and I'm just going to stick it on the on the lead of the capacitor. And this one here, I'm just going to splice right into that wire that's already there, and that'll do it. Not quite long enough to reach, so we just splice it on there. Okay, that gets our 0.01 and our 0.2. Now we need a 0.1 to go from this wire here, which is still hanging loose here. We don't want to forget that one. And that goes to the same terminal as the other. We need a 0.1. What you can do when you're ordering them is from Mouser, you can go through and you can count all the capacitors up first and just order what you need. I order them 100 at a time or more. Some values I order 200-300 at a time because I do so many radios. But that's not going to do. But if you're only going to do one radio, there's no reason that you got to let it cool. There's no reason that you can't just count them up and order just what you want. And Mouser will send you, one capacitor if you want. The shipping charges are the same whether you buy one or whether you buy 100. So you're going to get clipped if you buy only one capacitor. But they will send you just one capacitor. I've ordered one IC from them before, and it comes just fine. The IC costs $3 and the shipping was $9.95. So you want to try to get as many components as you can per order so the shipping doesn't end up costing more than the components, because you're always going to have that $10 shipping charge from Mouser. It's just that's what they charge for shipping. So you want to get as many components as you can when you make an order. They'll send you one resistor. They'll send you a 10-cent resistor, and it costs you $10 to ship it. So you make your choice. I mean, they don't have a minimum order. All right, that takes care of all those. Okay, now let's see. We're going to get into a difficult one now. Okay, we've got the filter capacitors. They've got to go. You cannot leave those filter capacitors in there, or you're going to burn out the rectifier tube. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get this 0.01 out of the way. Okay, we're going to remember it goes on the filter capacitor that's the furthest out. And I'm just going to leave it hang so I don't forget where it goes. Now, what you do is reach down in there with a heavy pliers and cut the terminals off of that capacitor. Leave the wires all soldered on and just cut those terminals off. Okay, that's one of them. That's the second one. Okay, I cut a wire right there. Now, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and take that wire and I'm going to solder it back in so I don't lose where it goes. If you accidentally cut a wire like that, go ahead and immediately solder it back where it goes so that you don't lose track. Now that wire needs to be scraped a little bit. If the wires are dull colored, you won't be able to solder to them very good. So just scrape it with a knife a little bit to get it shiny and you'll solder real easy. But make sure you pay attention to what you're doing, and if you slip and cut a wire like that, immediately put it right back where it goes, because if you forget where it goes or don't know where it goes, you'll have to trace the wiring on this thing, and wow, you talk about add some time into troubleshooting. It's hot there. All right, there's two of them pulled out. Okay, we got one more left. Now that one, let's see, I think we're going to leave that one. Yeah, okay, we got one of them that's the capacitor that's in the cathode of the power tube. Okay, that's a 25 volt capacitor. We don't have to take that one out. It is not an important capacitor. It does not leak enough to alter the operation of the radio. So we're going to leave that one in there. I'm just going to bend it back a little bit out of the way. All right, now I'm going to get the filter capacitors. We've got to put two filter capacitors in there. I got a 47 at 160, 160 volt, and a 22 at 160. Okay? We connect the capacitor between the CAN terminal on the capacitor and each of the terminals we cut loose. Okay? I'm going to take the 22 microfarad and I'm going to place it on the inner side. It does not matter. You can put them either way, but I'm just going to put it there because it's easy. Notice that these capacitors are very small compared to what was in there. So it makes it, it's not that difficult to go ahead and do it. In the old days when those capacitors, those replacement capacitors were big, sometimes you'd have to take the can out of there and put the capacitor where the can was. But with these little bitty ones that you can get nowadays, there's no problem at all. Okay, we're going to just stick that in there. And I'll pull that connection up so that we don't have any chance of it touching the chassis. Just pulled it up with the wire on the capacitor and solder it under. Okay, that takes care of one of them. I'm going to go ahead and snip that extra wire off of there. Okay. Now, we have one more. Okay, this one's got the wires coming out the ends. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to stick it on there. Make sure that you get the negative on the capacitor to the can. You want the negative wire on the capacitor going to the can. Okay, just make sure you do that right, because if you put it in backwards, you're going to have a big bang when you turn the radio on. The capacitors are marked as to which end is the negative, and that goes to the can. You can use the same capacitor that has them out both ends. They're cheaper and they're easier to mount. I just have this one. I just grabbed it out of the box, and I'm just going to go ahead and solder that one in there, and that'll do just fine. Okay. That'll just be bent down there like that, and this 1500 ohm resistor is in there. And we can't touch anything. None of that can touch. It's all mounted very nicely. There's a wire down in there that looks like it's bare. I'm going to bend that up a little bit. Just make sure that none of it can touch any of the metal. Okay? Alright, that's got our filter condensers. Now, we got this capacitor we have to redo. Alright, that's a 0.01. Okay, that'll be another one of these disc capacitors. Got long wires on it, so it's easy to do. Okay. One of them goes to the filter capacitor here. We said it was the terminal that was on the outside, so I'm just going to solder it right onto there. Okay. And we just bend that around and we solder it where it goes. Okay, I'm just going to cut this one off. Solder it on. Okay, now that takes care of all the capacitors on this end of the radio. We're over half done. We're more than half done. All right. Now, we got one up inside here. Okay, we'll bend this resistor out of the way, and we'll reach in, and we'll cut the wire, pull the capacitor up. Okay, this one goes to the center of the volume control. Okay, I'm going to cut it off completely from the volume control. Throw it away. It's a .005. These are not polarized. These the little paper capacitors are not polarized. They have a polarization mark on them, but it does not matter which way you put it in the radio. Okay, a 005. Little itty bitty thing. Little itty bitty thing. Boy, that's a little small one. Same value, same voltage. Each one of these is 400 volt capacitor. Okay, I'm going to take that and solder it to the center of the volume control. Okay, I'm going to cut the extra wire off it so it doesn't touch anything. Okay, and then bend it around and put it right on the wire where it came from, where the other one came from. Solder it on there. Cut off the extra so it doesn't touch anything. Okay? Now, I'm going to position that, make darn sure it isn't going to touch any extra terminals in there. You don't want anything to touch in there. You don't have to worry about it. The stuff isn't going to move once you put the radio back together. So as long as you get everything to where it doesn't touch when you're looking at it, you're not going to have any trouble. It's not going to sit there and bend around when the radio's back together. Okay, that takes care of all those. We've just got 2 more to go, and we're done. Okay, let's take this top one here. Okay, it goes to the second terminal in. There's three terminals in a row here. It goes to the second terminal in. All right, I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to cut it off. And on this end, I'm going to leave the wire loose. And that is a 0.04. Okay, I don't have any 0.04, so I'm going to use a 0.05. It'll work just fine, no problem at all. Ah, we had 3 of them. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick 1/2 of it onto the terminal where it goes. And I'm going to leave it hang loose because I know it goes over here with this wire. But we got one underneath it we got to get first. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that one out. Okay, now the one underneath it goes to the first terminal. Okay, so I'm going to cut that off. Being careful not to cut any other wires. Ooh, wait a minute. No, it does not. Ooh, I almost made a mistake there. Okay, that capacitor bends around and comes over to this tube pin over here. Okay, it goes where that 470 ohm resistor is. Alright, so I'm going to cut that capacitor loose. Okay. And there's the wire. And it goes the same place this one does. Alright, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and cut that loose. Get it out of there. Okay, this is a 0.02. Okay, that's a common one. We got that. Alright, we're going to go. Okay, since this one and this one go to the same point, I'm just going to bend this one back around and we're ready to go on it. Okay, I'm just going to stick it right there and I'm going to twist it around. Okay, now the O2 goes from this wire we just cut loose and it goes to that same point. So I'm going to stick that in there, solder it. Let it cool. Okay, and I'm just going to stick that down there and okay, bend it around. Solder it down. Okay, let it cool and cut the extra wire off. Use these pliers. Okay, now that takes care of those two. Now I'm going to make sure, right there it's going to short, so I'm going to take that and move it over. I want that moved over so we don't get any shorts. And this one here could touch here, so I'm going to move that one over there. You just want to make sure that that capacitor just goes to the 2 points it's supposed to and doesn't touch any other stuff there. Alright, we got one more to go. Okay, it goes to that same point, and this goes to the third terminal in. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just cut that wire off and reach down in here. Okay, it's an 04. Okay, we don't have any of those, so we use an 05 again. An 05 is the most common capacitor in a radio. You'll find more 0.05s than any other value. And you know, I buy those usually 200 at a time instead of 100 at a time. Okay, now we'll just solder that to the third terminal. Alright, and then this one goes to the same place as all the rest of it. That's the common of the radio. It's not the chassis. The common of the radio is not the chassis. Alrighty, that takes care of it. And I'll cut off the extra wire there so it doesn't touch anything. And we have now recapped the entire radio. Oh, we got one more to go. One more to go. I remember it was here. Okay. This was one that isolates the antenna from the chassis so that you don't get shocked when you hook the antenna onto it. Okay, it's a 001. Now, I bet you that's a good capacitor. Let me see. I'm going to check it with the meter. Oh, yeah. Okay, that one's good, so I'm not going to bother with it. A small value like that, a 001, they rarely go bad. It's interesting. If the value is less than a 005 or so, you rarely find them go bad. And it's interesting. They use thicker insulation in there because they want a lower capacitor value, and they couldn't use the thin insulation that they use in the other paper capacitors because they would have too small of a capacitor. Okay, now we have to straighten out the rest of this up on the top. Speaker is loose. Okay, the antenna and all that is connected up. If these wires come off, I'm going to go ahead and I'll show you a drawing that'll show you where these wires go, so that if they break off of here, you can hook them back on. Because it's very common for these to break off. These have got little fan stock clips on them, so you can remove them. But some of them are soldered on, and those wires flex a lot, and they get broken off. But our speaker's broken off here. I'm going to replace this piece of wire because it's also it's broken. It's just right on the edge of breaking. Okay, we got this one here coming from the audio transformer, and it goes to one, and then the ground, the case goes to the other of the speaker. Okay, I'm just going to clean these terminals on the speaker off a little bit. And I'll just get some wire, but an iron will not. When you're soldering onto the chassis and stuff, you're going to have a soldering gun. This is 100 watt. It's not a big one. You don't need it. Let's see. 100, 140. 100 on the low setting, and when you pull the trigger all the way, it's 140 watts. Nice little iron. You don't need a great big huge one. I've got a huge one, and it's used for some things, but for radio repair, the small one here is fine. Okay, we'll just make that like that. Doesn't matter which of the two wires goes to which terminals on the speaker. Just hook one onto each one. Okay, I'm going to take this. Now this wire coming off the transformer on this one has got insulation on it. It's got enamel on it. So what I'm going to do is very carefully skin that enamel off so the solder will stick. It's very difficult to solder through that enamel. Most of that enamel on these old transformers will come off if you hit them with a soldering iron, but it's a lot easier just to skin it a little bit so the solder will start sticking. Okay, what I'm going to do, see, I don't want that to break off the transformer, so I'm going to wrap this around here so that the wire is supported by the other one that's connected to the case. Okay, and I'm just going to solder that on there. Okay, and we're going to put a little piece of shrink tubing over that so that it doesn't touch anything and short. heat shrink tuber shrinker. Okay, now we take the other ends. Yep, let it cool. All right, now that gets our speaker hooked up. Okay, we're missing two tubes here. There's a little piece of paper that's on the inside of one of the shells that shows which tubes go where. So if the tubes are missing or they're all pulled out, then you can just look on that little piece of paper and it'll show you where they go. 50L6 and 35Z5. This is a brand new tube, I'm sure. It looks brand new and it comes in a brand new box. Okay, now that gets all of our stuff in there. We've got one thing to check here. We've got our light bulb. These are regularly burned out, so we check it with a meter. It's good. Okay, so we've got a good light bulb. All right, well, okay, we're ready. Okay, we take this and we plug it in. Okay, the juice is on. Aha, our light bulb lit. Okay, now we've got the tubes in the right sockets and the right tube numbers and all that shit. Okay. Aha! Got some noise. Okay, now I'm going to put this okay, that's on Disney radio. It's at the right place on the dial. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up the IFs using that. You could use a signal generator, but I'm going to go for you guys that don't have one. That's two of them. Okay. All right, now let me explain what I did here. Now, in Houston, we have a station that's at 1590. It's Disney radio. And what I've done is I've tuned the radio to 1590. And it's at the right place on the dial. If it was not on the right place on the dial, then I would go ahead and adjust the oscillator to put it in the right place. But since it is at the right place on the dial, we're not going to mess with the oscillator. Okay, since we're at the right place in the dial and we got the station coming in, we then have taken the IF transformers and peaked them up for maximum volume. And that's all we've done. It's very, very simple operation. We have two IF here and two of them in the back over there on the other one. And now we've got the radio all working. Looks good. Okay, and our speaker. Okay. Now what I'm going to do on this speaker, this one has a little bit of a a rip in this cone. Makes it sound fuzzy. So what we're going to do to fix that, we take contact cement. Take an old paintbrush, small paintbrush, and just take contact cement. Contact cement is rubber. It does not harden. It just turns into a rubbery coating. And that strengthens the cone. And when we put it across this crack, it glues that crack together, and that'll get rid of that buzzing noise that the speaker was making. We just coat the entire cone with the rubber cement. There's a little trick that you can use to salvage these old speakers. A lot of times the paper is rotten, and no matter what you do, you can't get the darn paper to be any good. So what you do is saturate it with rubber cement, and that strengthens that paper back up again. And you can take one of those speakers that's just about to fall apart, put that rubber cement on there, it'll strengthen that paper to the point where that speaker will last forever. The trick is to use rubber cement. You don't want to use any kind of hard glue, otherwise the cone won't move, and it'll make it where it sounds like it's coming over a telephone or something. It's got that old tinny sound. But by using rubber cement, you don't lose any of the flexibility, and yet you strengthen all the fibers. It glues all the fibers of the paper together, and yet doesn't harden up to where it causes the thing to not vibrate. Just saturate that entire cone with it. And when it hardens, that crack will be glued together permanently. Okay. Wipe our brush off till next time. Okay, and that salvages the speaker. Okay, we're going to just let that dry, and then we're going to assemble the radio again. Okay, we got it all completely working. We're ready to put it back together again. We've got the dial fixed. We got it lubricated. We got it tuned up. We got all the capacitors changed. We got the tubes in the right spot. Speakers fixed. We've only got one more thing to do. We have a grill cloth that we have to make, and we'll do that when we get the case put back together. Okay, let's do that. Okay, the next thing we have to do, we need the grill cloth. Now, the original, they took and they fastened onto the speaker. That is kind of a rinky-dink way of doing it. It doesn't work very well. There's a better way of doing it. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of cardboard. This is a piece of stiff cardboard that I picked up at the art supply. You can get it at Hobby Lobby or any art supply dealer, or on eBay even. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to cut us a piece that's going to fit just right in the back of here. So we're going to make it, it's 3 inches, and the height is 5 inches, okay? 3 by 5, even dimension. Okay, just trim that. Okay, that should fit just right. Okay, we're just a little over. Alright, I'm going to take about a 1/16 of an inch off of it. Okay, now what we're going to want to do hold it in here, and I'm just going to make a kind of outline here. Okay, that'll let us see where our openings are. Okay, now for the sound to come through, we need to cut that out. X-Acto knife. And we're going to just go right along here. Okay, now what that does is it gives us a little frame that will fit in there. Our grill cloth, I've just picked this little piece of floral here. It's a floral veneer, velour, and we'll just cut a piece of that to fit. Piece of frame. You just go to the fabric store and get any kind of a fabric that you like to make the grill cloth out of. Pick something that won't clash with your color of the radio case. Okay. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to spray these with contact cement. Okay. We'll just take contact cement. This is just a 3M contact cement, spray contact. I'm just going to go ahead, frame, back side of the grill cloth. Now, we let that go ahead and dry for about 5 minutes. Okay. Now, we just take this, take our frame, now stretch that to where it's fairly tight in all directions. Okay, and then stick it down on it. Okay, then take the scissors, okay, that gives us our piece of grill cloth, okay, and that fits right in there like that. Okay, that looks very nice. Okay, now to stick it in there, we're going to use heat glue. Okay, now you take this, we're going to put a strip of heat glue. We're going to go right along the edge on the top and the bottom, okay? Just put a strip of heat glue there. Okay, now take your grill cloth, put it right in place and stick it down. Sure it goes right in the right area. Okay, and that takes care of the grill cloth. Okay, now we're going to put the chassis back in. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to solder our little piece of antenna wire onto the terminal on the bottom here. Goes through like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it through here. Okay, now connect the antenna wire. It's kind of convoluted here to get it all aligned right. Okay. Now, we just take and we slide that into position. Got our light bulb here. got to get this. Okay, this light has a little clip on it. It goes right on the very top of this outlet right here. Okay, we just take that, we shove her on there like this. Okay, it puts it right next to the dial and right next to where our little plastic bezel goes. Okay, it just clips on there. It goes right at the very top of this cutout. Okay, now we slip this in. Do what we can to catch that, get that screw to go in that hole. Okay, now got a hole in here, matches up with that, slip that on there. We got a little snap clip here, it goes in the hole here. Just press that in there, okay, and that holds the antenna in place. Okay, now I'm going to tip it over, use some rags and stuff. You don't want to scratch up your case. Second screw. Okay, now our power cord comes around, there's a slot in the bottom. We've got to put that into place before we get this tightened to down. It goes inside of this groove. It comes out the hole in the bottom. See that little slot? It just comes out of there. Okay? And that's our power cord. Okay, now I didn't tighten this down. I haven't tightened it down yet. I've just put it snug. Same with this one. Just snug down a little bit. Okay? We don't tighten it down until we get it positioned. We've got to get our two shafts to go through the holes in the clamshells. Okay, we're back together. Okay, now take our clamshells, okay, this one here has the one that sticks out. Okay, now these are a little bit dull looking, so I'm just going to take them and I'm just going to buff them up a little bit so they look a little better. Allen wrench. Don't tighten it up, just take it and snug her down. Okay. Make sure that the case is pressed into the groove properly. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is put the handle on it. Get the handle, it fits in the hole. Take our other shell. Okay, with the handle, and hole on that one. Press the shell onto the brass. Okay. Take our other little retainer. Take the knobs and clean them up. If they have a little dirt on them, just clean them up a little bit. And then we have a little button that goes in there, a little plastic button. Okay, we just take that. It's got a little raised place there, and that fits into the little raised place there to align it, keep the W up right. And that just presses in place like that. It sticks right in there. Okay, and that's it. All right, now if we turn the power on, okay.
Is bad. There's a lot of the joints, the bones in our joints. When a doctor looks at an X-ray,
instead of understanding and believing in your heart of hearts of what to do is destroy you, they want to rip out your guts. They want to.
Isn't that beautiful? Look how beautiful that radio is. Isn't that just beautiful? And that's how we restore the h-126 radio. Alright, now I was going to show you how these wires connect on here. Okay, the top wire on the back, on the antenna, connects to the wire that goes on this tuning condenser here on the top. Okay, that's just a short piece of wire going straight over. Okay, the bottom one goes to the wire that goes down underneath. You see that wire goes down from a hole underneath? Okay, that's the one goes to the bottom connection on there. Okay, now over here, the wire that goes to that little capacitor goes to the frame of the radio. Okay, just a short jumper here over to the frame of the radio. And then the one from the bottom over here has a short piece of wire, and that solders onto the bottom frame there. That's where the antenna connector is, on the bottom frame. Okay, that's where your 4 wires go on the antenna, because they break off sometimes. When you find the radio, they'll be broken off.